Hello and welcome to the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast all about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm John Hassall.
And I'm Stuart Baird. John, wonderful to see you.
Wonderful to see you, Stuart, as always.
Another podcast.
Another podcast.
You're smiling with that cheeky face. I wonder what you have for us this month.
It's one of my podcasts. In fact, that's wrong. It's not one of my podcasts. This is the first podcast. It's basically been written by all our fans, all the people that follow us on social media.
Okay,
you know where I'm going with this, don't you? Because you might recently remember we put out a poll. You're drawing me a blank here, but I will remind you. There has been a poll that went out on Facebook and on Twitter about your least loved junctions.
Oh, I remember
Scotland.
seeing a bit about that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I hoped you didn't look at the comments too closely.
No, I can't say I did.
Because I was looking at these. But I've gone through all of this. Now, obviously, we couldn't put a proper poll there, so I just had to kind of go from what people's comments were.
Yeah, they've stopped allowing polls on social media now.
So annoying.
You can't, for some reason, I think Twitter still allows it to an extent, but Facebook, you can't have voting now. Yeah.
No, you can't. But I thought this would be an interesting topic because it's Scotland-wide.
Yeah.
It doesn't focus on a particular area and kind of get some people's feedback and get people engaged and involved a bit in what they're saying and put that onto the podcast.
Never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing.
No.
And do you know what else is cool? You have no idea what the list is.
No, I must admit, I truthfully have no idea what is on your list. So, I look forward to being surprised. No doubt there will be some interesting choices. I look forward to hearing what they are and hopefully can give some of my views, feelings on each of them.
Absolutely.
I imagine there will be some usual suspects, but hopefully some surprises.
Yeah, I'm giving nothing away, okay, until we get into it. I mean, the way we're going to do this is that some people from certain parts of the country might not be overly familiar on some of these junctions. Yeah. And if that's the case, lucky you.
And this is a Scotland-wide.
Scotland-wide.
Yeah.
So we will explain, to the best of our ability, why these junctions, how they came to be, so to speak, and what some of their background is, if we know that for some of these things. So we'll give it a whirl. But this is counting down from 10, as voted by you, your least loved junctions. Okay?
Here we go.
Are you ready?
As I'll ever be.
Okay, all right. Coming in at 10th position, is Whitlet's Roundabout on the A77.
At Ayr.
Yes, you know the one.
Yes, I do know the one.
So Whitlet's Roundabout, it's a large multi-arm roundabout. I believe it's 4 lanes.
It is now.
It is now 4 lanes, which is the main entrance to Ayr, which is part of the Ayr bypass. Now, the Ayr bypass was built in stages throughout the 1960s and ultimately finished in the early 70s.
Yeah.
The Whitlet's Roundabout obviously been a feature on this, but it was widened in 2006, which also included its signalling as well, which is quite an expensive scheme. It cost about 3.5 million, and that was designed by Scott Wilson.
Right, our old favourites.
Yeah. And R.J. McLeod is the contractor. Okay.
If someone had asked me when I thought that was done, I wouldn't have thought it was as long ago as that.
Yeah.
2006. I mean, that's what, 17 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's a while, yeah.
It is, yeah. How the years go quicker when you get older, I find.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I hadn't driven on it prior to this. It got a few votes. This was, by the way, between Twitter and Facebook. People had mentioned this in some way or another, that Whitlet's Roundabout.
I imagine a lot of the problems about Whitlet's go back into memory. In the sense that on busy summer days at the weekend, when it was a 2-lane roundabout, you would typically have a couple of miles of queues on the southbound approach.
So you remember this from your earlier days or childhood when you would go down that way?
Whitlet's was a nightmare. There's no denying it. Mostly in the southbound direction. I imagine in the northbound direction there probably was issues as well, because it is a single carriageway. So that's right. Yeah, I would think that most of the operational issues with it go back to pre-2006, but they've stuck with people.
They have stuck with people, but you just said something there. It's a dual carriageway that approaches it from the north, and then ultimately you're spat out the other side on a single carriageway.
Yeah. But most of the traffic turns right into Ayr. Done the A719, is it? Maybe?
We'll just have to go with what you said, unless you can sneakily turn around and look at Google there.
It's the racecourse road.
Stuart, it's fine. We'll edit that bit out. It's fine. Anyway, no, that's it, and that's certainly the case when I use it. I generally, when I'm using the A77, it's my ultimate destination is often air. So I'm turning at that roundabout. Yeah. My personal opinion of it is it's like any of these large signalised roundabouts, provided you have looked at the signs on approach, keep to your lane, and react to the lights accordingly, you'll be fine. I can't say I agree that Whitlett's is a junction I would consider,
not
in
anymore.
my experience, like terrible. But you were saying historically it was just queues, congestion.
Yes, nowadays not so much. Can still be busy on a nice sunny warm summer's day when people are heading to Ayr.
Okay.
In fact, remember the last time we went to Ayr when we were doing archivey work down that part of the world? That was a pretty nice day. Yeah, and it was very busy. But it wasn't.
We got through it. I mean, I wasn't moaning.
It was a few minutes. It wasn't like half an hour.
No, it's not a sheriff hall.
No, not anymore.
So, yeah. Have you noticed every part of the country has a sheriff hall? Yep. There's a sheriff hall of the north. There's a sheriff hall of Ayrshire. Yeah. Apparently Whitlett's. So, yes. Sure. What's the solution at Whitlett's? Even if it maybe it's a solution in search of a problem here, but what would be better?
Well, I guess like any grade separated roundabout that has multiple arms, at grade roundabout.
Make it grade separated.
Make it grade separated, i.e. have a flyover for traffic going north to south, and then they don't need to interact with the traffic looking to go to Ayr. So you would change it from a Sheriff Hall to a, what's a good grade separated equivalent? Belfield? It's probably not a good one to use, actually.
It's a grade separated roundabout, but when it's a different animal, Belfield, I think, but... Yeah, like M8 Junction 4.
Whitburn. Yes.
Whitburn. So there's the main thoroughfare goes over the top.
Oh, you're right, exactly.
And those kind of things. So there is another solution you could have, and it would be the throughabout or hamburger.
Oh, I've seen them down south.
Yes, it's not a thing we have in Scotland, but that is where it's basically... you cut through the roundabout without having to provide a structure, so it's you're bypassing through the middle.
The first one of them I used was an A34 at Dudley near Oxford.
Yeah,
Didcot, not Dudley. Didcot.
No, I've used one, which is Switch Island.
Right. I've never used that one.
Which is the Sheriff Hall of Liverpool.
Oh yeah, maybe I've used that one. Yeah. Anyway, we digress.
We digress indeed. So that's
we're thinking of
hamburger junctions.
We still have junctions elsewhere.
I know. No, that's fine. Okay, well that's all we need to say on Whitlett's. So that brings us on to number 9. Now number 9, let's see if you can guess it, Stuart. It's where loads of motorways meet. It's incredibly wide, and I'm very surprised a lot of people moaned about this.
This better not be Plantation.
I'm afraid it is, sir.
I'm sorry, we don't allow M8 junctions to be criticised on this podcast.
Plantation, or more specifically from what people had been saying, this is my interpretation, it's getting yourself ready for Plantation which is causing the problems. So particularly, someone has said here, and I'm going to preface what someone has said, and then we can go a bit into the background, okay? And just so people know where we're talking about, this is M8 Junction 22, 21 complex, where the M77 and the M74 all meet the M8 just south of the Clyde. Okay,
and this is a junction that didn't have any problems until the completion of the M74.
Yes, that's right.
And the problems only really exist in the southbound direction, leaving the M8 or the M74 to go south in the M77.
77. Well, according to Sandra Brownlee on Facebook, she says getting onto the M74 when coming from the M8 at Hillington in rush hour is an absolute pain in the chebs.
Is that what she said? I should have looked at these notes before we recorded this.
No, don't worry.
This is what happens, listeners, when I allow John just to go away and plan the podcast.
I've never heard pain in the chebs before, but I'm sorry to hear this, Sandra. But I know exactly what she means, right? So she's
about the chebs or the
junction? No, I know. You come on, right? So you're heading eastbound on the M8. You've come from Bray Head, or whatever. Yeah. And
it's not, the weaving is
the
not
weaving,
ideal.
as soon as you get near Helen Street or even prior, people are all sitting in lane 1 and 2, and then there's people coming on from Helen Street or on Ibrox, then trying to get out to lanes 3 and 4 to carry on over Kingston Bridge, and there's this beautiful dance, except it's not beautiful and it's not a dance.
And it's got worse recently.
Yes, because obviously a lot more traffic's using the M74, you know, and because it's a popular road, and
I have even seen some queues there in the Interpeak.
Oh,
recently.
we don't do that in Glasgow. It's generally quite predictable.
It is, but that weaving, so eastbound M8 to M74 southbound, the weaving, say, from going from lane 2 to lane 3 or 4.
But I'm talking
with M77 traffic.
I'm talking about. I mean, what I actually think is possibly what Sandra's alluding to, and what several other people have alluded to. I just thought Sandra's comment was hilarious, so I kept it. But one of the ones I think they're referring prior.
Oh, right. So the approach.
The approach.
So you're still on the M8.
Yeah, and you notice.
So that's not Plantation then.
Well, it's
Helen
leading,
Street.
yeah, but
That's
you're
Cardona.
gonna get involved in Plantation. Helen Street's always been there, just that.
Know.
But you're right. When you try and cross over
Yeah.
from basically the M8 onto the M74, and you've got the M77 traffic trying to do basically the opposite sometimes and loop round.
Yeah.
You need to have wits about you.
That's what happens, I suppose, when we have a road network that is being used by a lot more cars than it was designed for.
So, the story here, obviously, it all opened in 1976.
Well, kind of.
1975 towards 1970 because it's 2 stages. But remember, you just said about 2011.
Yeah.
So those carriageways.
Well, the M77 didn't come into use until 1981.
Yeah.
The M8 opened September 76.
76.
81 for the M77, but it was only going to Dumbreck
But
Road.
if we look at the footprint of Plantation, it's been there since
75, 76.
75, 76.
Okay.
But you're saying then these other roads start joining the party.
Yes.
You get Dumbreck Road connection from 1981. And 2011 is when the M74 completion was done. And suddenly these outer carriageways are becoming a lot busier.
We could do a whole podcast just on the theory behind
Plantation.
braided carriageways.
Oh,
and why they were considered appropriate there, because you had a conversation with John Cullen about that years ago, and about why that was considered the most appropriate design there. And there aren't many braided carriageways in Britain.
There's not much braiding. I mean, Hermiston can be considered braiding. Right, okay. And of course, you know, braiding is different from what we call collector distributor roads, which is what we have from the M8 from Junction 8 through to Junction 6.
So add that to the podcast list. The braided
carriageways discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. There is obviously identified conflicts. Is there anything you think, Stuart, which would be better? If you blank check magic wand moment.
Well, yes, there is.
You're choosing your words carefully now.
I have often wondered.
Right.
That eastbound to southbound manoeuvre, right? So at the moment, M8 traffic continues from lanes 3 and 4. M74 traffic drops off from lanes 1 and 2. That creates a conflict between merging traffic from the M77 because the M8 traffic then has to pull right to come in. I have often wondered if
I know where you're going.
There would be any benefit to having them merge further east after the ramp from the M77. So you'd still be in the mainline M8.
Yeah.
And then you would drop off, just like a standard junction. And you would peel off left. And then the M77 traffic almost would be in its own lane by then. And then the 3 lanes would then continue south. So that kind of changes things. So the only thing that would perhaps go off...
And you don't need to demolish a bridge.
Exactly. The only thing that would maybe go off prior to the ramp above your head in the M77 would be the Scotland Street traffic.
Yeah.
Right? So you would segregate that away. That's just an idea in my head.
And Tradeston.
And then the other going the other way, really the main problems there is created by the bottleneck on the M77, where you've got 3 lanes initially, and then you get to junction 1 and it drops to 2. And because the Dumbreck Road off-slip from the M8 is restricted for M8 traffic, only M74 can use it, more traffic from the M8 goes south in the M77 so that it can still get into that area. I would potentially consider an extra lane as far as junction 2 in the M77 so that there's longer for the merging and weaving, and that would reduce a lot of that problem there.
No, I agree, and I often say that the M77 is the weak link in these things, but people are particularly focusing here, and the comments that I see is just going eastbound. It seems to be
that will probably be the most common in terms of the volumes of traffic. I'd imagine that's probably the most common. The M74 is obviously taking a lot off the M8 now.
I don't tend to see many bumps, just from my experience, and I've not had any.
Question for Nick.
Exactly, but you know what I think? Because it's so, it's quite fierce what you've got to do, and you've got to move. I think everyone has their wits about them and smartens up as they approach.
Yes.
And I think it's maybe one of these things where people are extra careful. The people should be careful everywhere, but they're extra careful.
It's never ideal because, see, you also have to bear in mind that a lot of the traffic coming down the M77 there is looking to go to Tradeston and Seward Street in those areas. So there is a lot of traffic.
Because you're encouraged to turn round using the loop.
Exactly. So whenever you have that conflict for weaving, you're going to have a problem. So I see why they did what they did, and it was obviously again it's designed for much lower traffic flows than what we have. I mean, you reduce traffic by 50%, that becomes a far
easier sort of thing. But at busy times, it's great fun.
All right, okay,
but
interesting.
Okay. So we're going to move on to number 8. Now I've loved talking about braiding there, so we're going to talk about some more braiding because number 8 is Hermiston.
Oh, the one and only.
The one and only. Now, is it Hermiston or Hermiston Gate?
I think it's Hermiston Gate.
It is. Yes. Hermiston Gate.
Yeah. And that's Gate with a G-A-I-T.
Yes, thank you. I've said Hermiston because I'm referring to kind of the whole complex in this case, but Hermiston Gate itself is obviously
is the rest of the complex not referred to as Calder?
No, Calder's the other bit south.
But is that not considered part of the?
No, I wouldn't say so. It's connected to the braiding, but Calder's its own junction. Okay. So tell you what, let's invent a term: the Hermiston Calder complex. But no, particularly Hermiston Gate in this occasion. So let's talk a little bit about the Edinburgh City bypass first. These sections, quite early sections, obviously opened up in the kind of 1980s, late 1970s, 1980s at the Edinburgh City bypass.
Yeah, I mean that's something about Hermiston that people need to bear in mind, that it was designed many years before it actually was built.
Yes. Now, Hermiston Gate actually was done in 1995.
Yeah.
So the bypass was already there, Calder was there, Goga was there in an old form, admittedly, and everything was great with the world. Then the M8 came and arrived, and there was instantly a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, because of how close this Hermiston junction was to Calder.
Yeah.
Now I've spoken to a Fairhurst engineer who worked on some of this, and the solution was to provide obviously a grade separated roundabout. Yeah. That's fine. The bypass wouldn't be affected by such a thing.
No.
But how would you get the slip road so close to Calder? How's it going to work? How's traffic all going to arrange itself? So they come up with braiding, which is these outer carriageways that you can use from getting from Calder and getting past it without having all this traffic crisscrossing and weaving everywhere. And I think that aspect of it works pretty well.
It's about the only part of that junction that does work at peak times.
Okay. Before we get on to your opinions, we probably tear it to shreds, or you love it.
Something else people have to bear in mind about Hermiston, right? When Hermiston was designed, the intention was that the M8 would continue straight ahead as the West Approach Road.
Now you're talking about Edinburgh motorways here.
Yeah. So the West Approach, by the time the West Approach Road was cancelled, it was an all-purpose dual carriageway, right, with limited access. But the intention was that road would have continued straight through that junction, so you would not have had the level of conflict that we have. So a lot of traffic heading for Edinburgh is having to turn right at Hermiston, then go to Calder, then take the A71 into the city centre. The intention was that there would be free flow connections for Edinburgh-bound city centre traffic. So only traffic looking to go north or south in the bypass would have been using the roundabout.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And again, it's similar to Glasgow. Yeah. Is because a lot of other things weren't built, then it means that
it's a symptom of the fact that other parts of it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Rather than it being a failure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've often thought as well where it's where the M8 terminates, or the M8 starts.
Starts technically on paper. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, starts there. Yeah. Junction 1. Yeah. With the Edinburgh City bypass, which is an incredibly busy road.
Yeah, and I wonder, had the design for so the M8 came later. But even the M8, to an extent, was designed when they still intended it to carry straight on. Calder and whatnot had been committed to in the 70s. But really, if the M8 had been designed first, do you think there would have been some fork arrangement where there would have been south-facing slips So the eastbound M8 to eastbound bypass would have had free flow, and likewise westbound bypass to westbound M8 would probably have had free flow.
So yeah, you just merge seamlessly,
because Calder and all that was already there.
Problem.
It's difficult to do all that.
There's some different things where they thought, obviously the M9 would follow roughly the path of the A8s. Now there was an unused bridge at Newbridge, which the motorway could have approached the bypass in a different way.
Yeah.
But that was quickly canned, and this M8 extension scheme in the 1995 came, and that was a result of that. Yeah. If anything, Stuart, it's very hard to tie up. But do you know what? There is a guy on Facebook, one of our top fans, Gareth Paxton, has a solution for the whole rotten thing.
All right.
Gareth says, I dream of a time when somebody goes nuts with the roads budget, widens the M8 from Newhouse to Hermiston Gate, and upgrades the A720 to M720 with a proper free-flowing junction at Hermiston. Dream on, right?
Yes.
Well, I hope you had a good dream, Gareth.
Yeah.
To be honest, it'll probably always be a dream.
The other side of the coin, of course, is that we could all dream that there was less traffic on the roads and then they would operate as they were originally intended.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen, is it? People are going to stay in their cars come what may, because we're all paying massive amounts for them, and goods and services need to get around as well. This is the sad thing. So there you go.
Personally, I've never considered Hermiston that bad. Not the junction itself. The M8 approach can be a pain if you get stuck in it heading towards Hermiston.
Yeah.
But that's more to do with the sheer amount of traffic heading that way than the junction itself. Because if you hit Hermiston off peak, you get round that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I always do. Yeah. Off peak. The problems with the problems I have with the whole bypass is when you're on the bypass.
Yeah.
And there's a certain junction further along. But I agree. I think it's get a bit of a bad rap. On top, Hermiston Gate's okay. It's that approach.
Yeah, and the whole situation's not helped by the fact that Edinburgh likes to pretend that no cars ever head into Edinburgh city centre, which in reality thousands of them do every day. And I think if they just were to admit to themselves that actually, people do come into the city from the west, and they don't all go to Newbridge Park and Ride or whatever, or Ingliston, that
they should really build a motorway all the way through to the Meadows.
Well,
I'm joking, by the way. I'm joking.
My goodness.
Goodness me.
We should do a podcast at some point on the West Approach Road. No, we don't mean that pissy wee windy wee single carriageway 7.5 ton road that runs from past Murrayfield. We mean the proper West Approach Road that was planned and contracts were signed for construction. The election was held. There was a change of administration, and the new administration had to pay the winning contractor millions to cancel that contract.
Yeah, because of the waste of time, basically.
Yeah.
No, we will have a podcast on Edinburgh in general about some of their plans that never came to fruition. But it's time to move on.
We'll probably all need counselling after that one, but we'll
what the listeners are on.
We'll have a helpline.
But anyway, we'll move on, right? Yep. Because it's time to talk about what's the 7th least loved junction.
Okay, but there's only been one surprise in the list so far.
What was that?
And that was Plantation.
Okay, all right. Okay. I don't know how you feel about this one, but coming in at number 7 in the charts is Kia Roundabout.
Oh.
So Kia Roundabout is where the M9 ends and the A9 trunk road starts. So this is Dunblane. Bridge of Allen. Sometimes people seem to call it the Bridge of Allen Roundabout, but it's Kia Roundabout.
And as people always point out to me, it's Kia with an EI, not with an IE.
Yes.
Very important.
Yes. So, what's the deal here? It opened in 1971. Obviously, I've mentioned the highlight is where you get this motorway that ends at the roundabout, and then the A9 starts.
This is an interesting one, right? Okay, so it was modified again in the early 90s when the Dunblane bypass was added, and that added an extra leg.
Yes.
Because obviously when it opened in 71, that was just the end of the M9, and all the traffic then took the A9.
So it was a terminus.
Yeah.
It was a terminus that seems to have been left. That's roundabout's okay.
Yeah.
People don't really put opinions on why. It was just Kia. I seen written.
Because southbound, coming off the A9 towards the M9, is a nightmare. And
I've seen it queue.
In peak season in particular, when there's a lot of traffic, you can find queuing back to at least the next junction in the Dunblane bypass. It can be a real pain. Northbound's never an issue. But there's a simple solution for key, and that's signalisation.
Oh, interesting. Nice and cost effective.
Yeah. The main problem is there's a lot of traffic heading into Dunblane coming up the M9. So commuter traffic coming from Stirling, people going into Dunblane, and they also have that right away because their leg is further round. So you're sitting and you're giving way to all this right coming traffic. Right, okay, there's a significant proportion going north on the A9, but a lot of it's heading into the town.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately what causes the issues in the southbound A9. Not a problem in the northbound M9 because there's very little traffic coming down the A9 turning right to go on the Doon Road.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why that's not really a conflict. It's that one leg, it's the southbound A9 that suffers the most.
Because of that.
So really, some signals would fix that
signals
easily.
would...
or a nice flyover.
Or a nice flyover. But say, money's a bit tight.
Signals would be the easiest
Signals would
option,
be the easiest thing to do on that.
And they could even be part-time.
Yeah, like a Raigmore, or didn't Worley's have part time?
Worley's was part time for a while, not for years. Wraith was part time for a while.
A great idea, but they never seem to keep part time signals.
No.
Again, because of somebody has to go to the cabinet and change it if something changes.
Yeah.
So agree. Flyover basically, or have signalisation.
Or signals, yeah. That would be the easiest way of dealing with it, I think.
Do you know it has high mast lights on it?
It does indeed. The most northerly high mast lights in Scotland, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think Broxton has high mast lights.
Oh,
No, I don't think there's high masts in Inverness, are there? Maybe.
Well, proper high masts. We're talking about like not a car park high mast.
Yeah, like an actual high mast.
Like an actual high mast light. Yeah. I had an incident on this years ago. Worked
at Kia.
Yeah, not me personally, but when I was working in a control room, a whole lot of cows got out on it, and it was an absolute nightmare, to be honest with you. And it always sticks in my mind. But personally, I have been held up quite a lot of it, just where you say on the southbound A9.
Yeah, but it's the southbound A9 that's the problem there. Yeah.
Okay, that's a relatively vanilla one there. That was quite straightforward. It's another roundabout, though, is it? So I bet you're keen to find out what number 6 is.
Yes.
It's Belfield. So A77.
As soon as I said it, I thought that's going to be on his list.
Yeah, Belfield interchange. This is on the Kilmarnock bypass, the A77. So it opened in 1973, built by our friends at Watlings.
Is this the one? This is the one that links with the A71.
A71 and A76. It was originally called something like Hurlford Junction.
Because it's a Hurlford bypass.
Yeah, Hurlford bypass, which is that part of the 76.
And that was also part of the last section of the A71, the urban dual carriageway section of the A71 at the Kilmarnock end.
Yeah, no, that's just it. Okay, so Belfield. Here's what I think. That people haven't put specifically on here. Belfield is one of these fast roundabouts. Do you know what I mean by a fast roundabout?
You can't pull out because traffic is flying round it.
Traffic flies round that for some reason. I think the approach to it from the A71, if you're coming down that road, you quickly, sort of woofed, you're at this roundabout, and it's quite something. And it's not signalised.
No, it's not.
It's not, and it can be quite hard to pull out. Now, coming off the A77, as if you're going southbound, you want to turn right onto the A71, you can be waiting there a while.
And it's one of the few in that part of the country of trunk road to trunk road interchanges as well. Because obviously the A76 coming up there, trunk road, A77 and A71 a major.
A71's not trunk, but it's a major road. That's how you get to Irvine. Yeah.
So there is a lot of traffic on there. Is there not a city deal proposal for signalling of that roundabout?
I have no idea. I keep hearing things about signalisation for it, like rumours, but then I go there and there's no signals.
Yeah. I know the junction. I've never got stuck in it. I've never had trouble with it. I've used the services a few times when heading south one way, either down the 76 or the 77.
There is a McDonald's and things like that there.
And a hotel and things that have been there since the 80s. We shared a photo on social media recently of those services when they had just opened.
Yeah.
That was interesting. Yeah.
Okay. There's another interesting feature about the junction. Nothing to do with it, the way it performs, but the slip roads on bridges.
All over the river.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And I just look at it going, this must have been very expensive.
I guess it must have been cheaper than moving the junction further south and having to realign the A71 to match in with that and the A76. What's
the solution with Belfield from you? I mean, you don't seem to... You're like me where, you see that could be a problem.
Signals.
Is it basically just signals?
Signals on a 30 mph speed limit. Easy.
What about flyovers?
No, that wouldn't justify a flyover.
But it's already flown under by the A77.
Yeah, you wouldn't need a third level there.
Imagine how high that would be, because it's a high interchange as it is. No. See the A71. Do you think a lot of traffic from the A71 is going to the A76?
No. No.
It's mostly A77.
Because if you were going down the A76 and you were coming west on the A71, you would turn left at like Galston, and you would take the A719 again, there's that road again, and you would turn left at the old crossroads and go down the A76 that way. You wouldn't go all the way to Belfield and then turn left. You would cut the corner. It's
number 6 on our list though, Stuart. I mean, people...
Obviously, it's annoying people.
People are annoyed by this.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? They hate it. Sorry. It's least loved. More than Whitlett's.
Yeah.
Whitlett's has more love than Belfield. So there you go.
Which, given Belfield is an existing problem and Whitlett's we think was mostly a historic problem, that makes sense.
2006 is kind of...
Yeah.
And the work's done there has solved it.
I'm just looking at Google Maps because it's annoying me that I wasn't quite sure on those road numbers.
Cheating.
So I'm just going to check.
Like, no, I'm just going to check
now. Right. So the Galston to Crossroads is the A719, and the one that goes from Whitlett's down into Ayr, and there'll be people screaming at their bloody. It is the A719. I was right. I'm doubting myself. That's you. You're drawing me eyes, going, I don't know.
This is fun. It is funny to try and wind you up, but there you go. Right, I'm going to get you nice and wound up now because it's on to number 5 or halfway through the list, and it is the Broxton roundabout.
Broxton. Where's that?
Perth.
I mentioned that earlier.
Perth, yeah. So Broxton roundabout. That's where obviously the A9 and the M90 meet, along with the A93 chucked in for good measure. So this is part of like the Perth bypass. I would not have picked that. I mean, again, it's a fast-moving roundabout. Yeah, it's unsignalised as well. So this Inverarmond, I've always felt, was much worse. Yeah, well, we'll get to Inverarmond if we have time under a different category. Yeah, Inverarmond versus Broxton. Inverarmond's got worse in many years because it's just busy. It's really, really, really busy as those things. But Broxton, interesting. I always remember Broxton having those big signs for the lorries tipping over on it. Oh, that's right. Yeah. You know, and there's which implies lorries hitting it too quickly. Yes. I mean, I think there was. Goodness me, I can't remember. I think somebody had said something about a lorry turning over on that and paint going everywhere and stuff like that. So quite a few people have mentioned it. Look, I'm not in Perth often enough to be able to comment. I mean, I'm occasionally it's a big feature of going up the A9. Yeah, it is. You're right, but I've never been stuck there. I have, and I'll tell you where Broxton's particularly bad or unloved, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. If you're coming along the M90 and you're approaching Broxton roundabout, basically heading northbound or westbound. Yeah. So you've come up from Craigend or something. That is where I got, and I was surprised when I got caught there for 20 minutes. Really? Once in the middle of the day for no reason. So, and it was coming from, it's where the M90's joining it. Now the A9, when I've used the A9 to A9 connections, I never have any problems. So that's Edinburgh to Inverness traffic. That's that move, isn't it? Yep. Yep. And that was okay. So that was okay. That's interesting. Busy. Fair enough. It is interesting. I have I ever gone M90 to A9? No, never. Have I ever gone A9 to M90? Yes. But that's much less of a problem, I think, isn't it? Have you ever tried using the services there? Yeah, many times. And gone out any problems with that? No. Yeah. No. It's that M90 which causes the problems, but so the simple solution there then is really just separating A9 traffic, isn't it? Could you provide 2 flyovers or a flyover just direct north to south? Yeah, well, this is just it. So people that have looked at there's tremendous debate about what to do with Broxton roundabout. It's where are the priority flows? Do you go A9 to M90, so from like, the north A9 onto it, or do you do A9 to A9? And what happens with the A93, which complicates it, which is obviously the local road that actually heads into Perth itself. Yeah, because obviously there is a significant amount of traffic. It needs a flyover. It needs a flyover, but where? That's your problem. Any thoughts on whether the new Cross Tail Link Road will take any traffic off the roundabout? No.
Is there any traffic coming from the south looking to turn up the A90, for example?
No. The Take Crossing Road doesn't link with the A90 between Brighton and Dundee.
Yeah.
So no, people are still stuck going through Broxton.
Okay. Interesting. I'll need to look at that one at peak times on Google Maps to see what's how it looks.
Well, people have.
Or is this a seasonal thing? Is this a tourist traffic issue, or is it a day?
No, it's day in,
daily?
day out,
Right,
because
okay.
again, a lot of people commuting in and around the Perth area have to suffer this thing.
Commuting where?
Well, in and around the locale, and
Right,
going
okay.
to people maybe going to Dundee, or people going down
Right.
down south, going into Fife and
Fair
stuff
enough.
like
Fair
that.
enough. Fair enough.
You know, it's
I need to get out
it's
more.
Perth. It's not on the moon, you know. So it's quite a big place. A lot of people who live around about. But anyway, listen, this is cool. But people have some opinions.
I bet they do.
Honestly, so Mike Watson wrote quite an interesting, quite long comment I'm going to read out. Now, there's some fruity language in here, but I've changed it out. Don't worry, because I know we don't.
We don't allow fruity language on our Facebook page.
Well, he's kind of abbreviated it, but if it's one of these things, if I was to read it out, you'd know. So I've changed it to stuff more appropriate. So Mike says, Broxton for sure is a poo show of a transition from motorway to dual carriageway. Needs replaced by a proper junction. Should never have been a roundabout in the first place. It's had so many lorry tips and rear enders over the years.
I hate when people make comments. This is one of my pet peeves on social media.
No, he's not done.
That should never have been a roundabout. Well, I'm sorry.
At the time...
But back in 1965, when there was going to be like 4 cars every half hour using it, the roundabout was more than sufficient.
Yeah.
It's just like, so you can't say, you can't say it should never have been a roundabout.
Yeah.
No, maybe a roundabout's not suitable now.
It opened in 78. This is the thing.
Even traffic was still
But
quite then.
it was already sort of like an area anyway, but it opened in 78.
Okay.
And hasn't had anything done with it. Oh, he's not done, Stuart.
Oh, all right.
Right,
sorry.
okay. He says he's got an experience of his own.
Right.
He said, I was heading to Edinburgh and was sideswiped by a lorry coming from the left, who should have been in the right lane to go to Glasgow. Pretty simple. Left lane for left straight on and right lane for straight right. Driver tried arguing the toss at the side of the road. Tell him I'd leave it to insurance. And he said he sent pictures in of the road markings which appeared to address the issue. So... yeah, so he's had a Broxton experience.
Interesting.
But you know what? I also think this is a good comment that sums up Broxton before we move on to the other one. Owen Rudge. Owen says, there can't be too many countries where 4 major routes collide in one roundabout as at Broxton. Would be nice to have that one replaced one day.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that's...
Yeah, I don't have enough personal experience of it to be
I,
able to comment.
I think it's definitely one that could take more love.
Okay.
And that love must come in a big grey flyover.
Okay.
So there you go.
Fair enough.
Number 4.
Still don't think that is... It's, sorry.
We must...
That was number 5.
That was number 5.
Yeah.
People have more love, again, for Belfield
Yeah.
and Plantation and Whitlets than they do for Broxton.
Interesting. Okay.
Broxton is the Sheriff Hall of Perthshire.
Fair enough.
So, there we go.
Right.
I know Inverarmon's staying very quiet at this point, but, you know...
Inverarmond, for me, I've had hellish experiences in Inverarmond. I'm surprised Inverarmond... I mean, the fact that you can only turn right in one lane coming down where really it should be a dual turn has always peeved me a wee bit.
I think they've changed that.
Have
Because
they?
if you come down on the A9...
Yeah.
No, I think it splits into...
It's
one lane on the A9, but you can use both for on the roundabout.
Yeah, it's a bit mad, that. Inverarmond's always been a pain in the bum for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It never used to be signalised. They popped signals on it.
Yeah. So Inverarmond isn't featuring in the top 10.
Well, you'll
then?
just have to see.
Oh, right, okay.
So, coming in at number 4 is Shaw Head.
What?
Yes,
No,
Shaw Head. Yes.
no.
Yeah, sorry.
No, this is another one. This is from
listen.
from people's memory, Shawhead, surely.
But we are allowing memorable things.
All
but
right.
there's a twist in the Shaw Head story.
Right.
So what do we know about Shaw Head? It's a junction on the A8. It's a junction for Coatbridge. Okay.
Yeah, and Bells Hill.
And Bells Hill.
Yep.
And it allows you to access the A725. Okay.
And the M8.
And now the M8. But originally it was just the A75 because there was no M8. We didn't get that until 2017.
And it was built in 1961.
Yep.
And that's when the junction on the A8 was grade separated. When
Yes.
the road was dual.
And they mucked around and added a slip road in a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But in its current form, now this junction was famous before the upgrade. It was notorious for being incredibly busy.
Oh yeah.
And it featured on roads.org's bad junction list, which
two lanes northbound, 1 lane southbound.
Yeah, which it's the bad junction list inspired this podcast.
I remember when traffic looking to travel east to Edinburgh used to have to turn right across the southbound traffic to join the A8, and then they put the roundabout in when they put hard shoulders on 20 years ago. And that made the moves, at least at the northern end of the junction, easier. But because the bridge was only wide enough for 3 lanes, and that bridge was widened as part of the upgrade works, that was always the constraint there. So I remember it was hell on earth. And you would have traffic queuing all the way down the A725 and all the way down North Road into Bellshill and all the way back up into Bellshill at Coatbridge at Whifflet. I do remember.
Well, somebody really doesn't like it here.
As it is.
No.
All right,
and
okay.
I'm going to describe to you. I'm going to have to paraphrase slightly with this comment, but he says Christopher Mills says it says according to him is worst junction ever. The traffic lights just don't work well enough. No filter lanes, he says, and he also goes so far as to even call it a death trap. Right? I disagree with the death trap remark, but what's alluded to here is if you are coming off the A8 heading westbound,
off the A8 westbound,
the A8 westbound,
come round the loop and you come up to and you meet the junction with North Road that's straight ahead of you.
That's the bit. That's exactly the bit. Who's meant to be where and what at North Road is the fact that this traffic all comes and meets because the lights time at the same time, and if you're turning right onto what is the A725 at that point. Are you meant to be behind or in front of the traffic? Now, this is something I've experienced, and I've always thought, hello, this is a bit of an interpretation you have to do here of what goes on with the junction.
Right.
But apparently this is, enough people have kind of said that this North Road issue is the single reason why Shorehead is what they consider a least loved junction.
That's interesting. For me personally,
you're a Lanarkshire person, so what do you think?
The manoeuvre that I tend to make, if I'm coming off the A8 westbound, and I tend to be then heading into Coatbridge, so I'm turning left, and it's got a separate phase, or it has an arrow on green, so you go left. So there wouldn't be any circumstances where I would be coming along the A8 west and then turn right onto the southbound A725.
Yeah.
And because of who would though? Because when you think about it, if you were looking to go south in the A725 or west, and you were going west on the M8, you would take the M8.
Take it that way,
so
wouldn't you?
I guess they've thought there's going to be very few people actually making that manoeuvre.
I had to do it when I was doing work there,
which is different.
Different, but it's like, hello, what's this?
Because you to be at that stage of the A8, you've come through Eurocentral. Yes. And at Eurocentral, you could join the M8.
Yeah.
So why would you do that unless you'd made a mistake?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one.
Yes, it's a redundant movement. So there you go.
Now,
use the M8.
I recall.
But what about the people coming out of North Road who might encounter this?
So that's the thing. So people coming from North Road, now they might look to turn left onto the A725 because they might not want to head for Bellsy Hill, which is fair enough, or turn right to go to Coatbridge, which is a popular manoeuvre. Mm-hmm. My understanding, the last time I used that junction, I thought that traffic from the A8 had 5 seconds of a head start before the green phase for North Road. Now, maybe that's been a recent addition to address some of these.
We're going to have to go and test this.
Issues.
I say there's a road trip required to go and test this.
Who doesn't want to go to Coatbridge or Bellshill?
Absolutely, but Shorehead in general. What do you think of it now?
Well, this is interesting, right?
Let's talk about how it interchanges with the motorway and how it interchanges with the A. What do you think of what's all been done?
I think Shorehead is 100 times better than it used to be. Mm-hmm. The way they connected to the M8 was not liked by a lot of people because you couldn't go from the M8 to Coatbridge.
Oh, yes.
However, there were good reasons for all of that, which is a whole podcast on its own, about the A8 being the regional distributor and the M8 being for strategic traffic. So you come off and you use the A8 to get to Coatbridge, blah, 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 blah. I have noticed recently, though, that although Shorehead was free flow after 2017 when it opened, southbound coming out of Coatbridge, I've noticed there has been some queuing on Google when I've just noticed accidentally. And But I think all the other moves are all right. I think that's still mostly free form.
I thought the whole thing just flowed beautifully.
Keep an eye. Google Maps one night.
On the traffic lights.
Have a look at the southbound A725. So the local road bit.
The thing is with Shorehead, there's a lot going on actually.
There is.
There's
a lot happens in quick succession.
A lot of lights and other things like that. It would have been a fun one to program in for the traffic engineers.
And listen, off peak, and when all the lights are green and you're coming down the hill, I have seen it used as a bit of a racetrack. It's a 40 mile an hour limit now, but you see people.
It was 40 when it was opened in 2017 throughout the thing, and it feels quick.
Maybe we need some staggered phasing through there off peak just to reduce that.
You can get traffic lights that do this, and they detect speeding and stuff. They go to red. So I think we're getting into the final three now, Stuart.
Okay.
And I completely forgot about this junction that has come in at the third spot of least loved. And this is the A90 Forfar Road junction in Dundee.
Where's that?
So Dundee. So you know the Kingsway in Dundee. So
showing my central belt bias again.
No, he's just making fun of me.
Is this at the Morrisons?
The Morrisons, I think, is a little bit further on.
Right.
It might be. So what happens, right? Okay, let's give people the idea of the area. So you're on the A90. You've come from Perth.
Yeah.
Or you're on the A90 and you've come from Aberdeen or Stonehaven.
Yeah.
Eventually, there is a right angle bend here, and this is the junction.
Right.
So if you're coming into Dundee, coming from Perth, you drive what is the dual carriageway, which is known as the Kingsway.
Kingsway, yeah.
Eventually, you have to turn left at this set of traffic lights.
Yeah.
An at-grade left-hand turn. Now, this in Sabre geek speak, the road forums, they call this a totso, turn off to stay on.
Right, okay.
And this is pretty horrendous in terms of being held up. I've been caught at this.
Right.
I don't know if you've made that trip up to Aberdeen a few times going in.
Yes.
Obviously, it's one of these situations where the major road has to go through the town.
It's one of these ones where I've realised, now that you mention it, the right-hand turn or the left-hand turn is always, why am I turning left? Why am I turning off this road to stay on it? Is it a hangover from before the A90 existed, or was the Kingsway there long before the A90 connection coming in? Because you used to head east, didn't you, up the coast? That was the main road years ago.
Yeah.
Is that the reason?
That is a reason. It's a hangover with these things. I mean, people have nice things to say about this. Brian Mitchell says he calls it an abomination.
Right.
At the junction at the Kingsway, and it's next to the Shell garage. That might be where you're thinking of. And Alex Middleton says the same. A94 for road, Kingsway for me. Hit it at Russia, and it's a nightmare. And you should see how liked these comments are, by the way, which just kind of pushed it up.
Reinforces the
So Dundee is one of these cities. It's a city, right? It's a big place, Dundee.
Yeah.
A lot of people live there. It's not bypassed, but a road goes through it, and Forfar Road is the miserable centre of this, you know.
Was I'm sorry, I'm showing my ignorance here, but Dundee historically was the Kingsway, the northern bypass of Dundee. Has there been some sprawl north of the road over time?
Has, especially if you see. So some of it, this road, if we're going to talk a little bit about Kingsway, some of it is grade separated junctions, but it becomes more like a kind of boulevard type thing as it approaches Forfar Road.
Yeah, because you get roundabouts and things, and footbridges and all these.
There's footbridges, crossings and stuff. Boulevards don't generally function very well for high traffic volumes, you know.
Yeah.
And then you come to this signalised junction at Forfar Road.
Interesting. I will need to pay more attention to that one the next time I'm there. But I've never been stuck in it. But then again, for me, a Dundee or an Aberdeen trip would be probably a weekend thing or something like that. So understood.
Many times. So
okay,
that's Forfar Road.
Yeah.
I agree with it. What would be better? A roundabout. I've never thought I'd say, but a roundabout would probably suit this situation better.
Has it never been a roundabout?
No. I believe that the problems, you've got constraints there in properties and things around, but if we were to demolish, you know, or move, you could do some kind of roundabout.
It's not an easy solution then.
The problem with any kind of grade separation is it's a completely urban environment. You know, it would be quite difficult.
Not something we tend to do now.
You know, you could have some kind of hamburger roundabout or something there to do with that. Okay. But no, Forfar Road, I completely forgot about it. But there you go.
Interesting. All right, I've been educated on this one.
I wonder...
Top two,
and I'm wondering now what you might think these were. But
one of them I know that has to be in the top two hasn't been mentioned yet.
Okay. Well, I'm going to mention it now.
Okay.
It is Sheriff Hall.
And that's number 2.
Number 2. God, you're thinking about
Christ,
what's number 1.
What's number 1? Yeah. Okay.
So great. I'm just going to say Fiona's got a great comment. She just says should be called Sheriff Hell. She says, and
I have had some experience of Sheriff Hall in the evening peak.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with Sheriff Hall? Part of the Edinburgh City bypass, the A720. It's kind of wedged more over at the eastern end, and it's where the A7. The road with all the sixes on it, which was formerly the A68, connects with it with roads going. So it's a 5-arm roundabout.
Yeah.
It opened in 1988.
Was it a terminus for a while? No, was it always in the middle?
It was just within that section.
Right.
It was shortly kind of a terminus in that section there, but the Miller Hill section then went beyond it, which we talk about in our city bypass podcast.
We will talk about on our city bypass web page that's coming very soon.
Yes. So originally it was only 2 lanes.
Now, can I add some context to the discussion on the city bypass?
Yes.
Because
this is the second time we're talking about the bypass night. It's not good.
We see a lot of criticism of the city bypass, right? From, again, like historically, right? Mm-hmm. And something I think a lot of people don't realise about the city bypass is although it's a trunk road maintained and managed by the government today, that was not the case before 1996.
You're right.
This Edinburgh City Bypass was entirely funded, designed and procured by the old Lothian Regional Council, right? So it was a regional road. And because the council had to pay for the vast majority of it, and budgets for councils and schemes are always tight, they could only build so much.
They originally were only wanting to do it single carriageway.
That's right. There were going to be single carriageways along the city bypass, and it's only because I think the Scottish Office did give them a bit of grant, maybe like less than 30%, that they were able to up it a bit and actually dual it, right? So the city bypass could have been much worse than it actually is. But please bear that in mind. I hate when we see people criticising original designers and engineers and things, because these guys were doing the best they could.
The best they could with what they had, at
the time. And it's very easy with hindsight to look back and criticise decisions that were made half a century ago in some cases. So I hate when I see people doing that on Facebook. So please bear that in mind about the city bypass. Yes, is it fit for purpose today? Probably not. But is it deliberate? Of course not.
No, exactly. It was at the time. Yeah. And we see that in our photographs. So you've made it a very, very fair statement, Stuart. You've redeemed yourself from all the criticism you've directed on other things. So the funny thing is, obviously, this opened 88. It was only 2 lanes, and it quickly got busy as things went in. Now, in 2006, Miller Hill Junction just further east opened, which is where the Dalkeith Northern bypass.
I remember that opening.
That took a bit of pressure off one of the arms of the roundabout. But people were still passing through this junction all the time. There was significant work done to widen it. It's now 4 lanes, and it's signalised. Even has powered cat's eyes in it. Have you seen these?
Yeah, they're good. They're interesting.
Really, really good. So stick to your lane thing. But Sheriff Hall, it's mentioned all the time. We always talk about Sheriff Hall. It is the... I don't know, it's like the poster boy of junctions that people don't like.
Well, hopefully some relief is in the future.
Yeah.
Because obviously there is a proposal for grade separation.
A flyover.
It's an interesting one. Because, I mean...
Do you know why it was never a flyover in the first place?
That was ground conditions.
Yes, it was.
And again, it comes down to the expense and the council not having the money that
there was a colliery there. Yeah. And things. It was going to be incredibly expensive to do that.
We know ex-local authority engineers from that era. They would probably have loved to have built a grade separated junction there, but they had to build what they had the money for.
Yeah.
So that's why.
There's a big fault here, so what can we do? Yeah, exactly. But now we seem to have overcome that.
Well, things have moved on. Things have moved on from an engineering point of view. It is easier to deal with these things than it used to be, but it's still expensive.
It is.
It is still expensive. Interesting debate about the Sheriff Hall grade separation, because a lot of politicians and people in that part of the world criticise it. Edinburgh-based, of course, Edinburgh-based. But, sorry, I don't understand it, because the city bypass is a bypass of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Surely it's in the interest of people within the boundary of Edinburgh to get as much traffic out of Edinburgh as possible. And the Edinburgh City Bypass is designed to do that. Now, there are people who have legitimate business in the east of the country and the west of the country, and they need to skirt around Edinburgh. They don't want to go in through Edinburgh. Who would?
People do it to get away from things like Sheriff Hall.
So surely you would want your bypass of the city to be as effective, efficient and resilient and as good as it could be. So surely that's reason enough
Absolutely, because I know people who go all the way up Harry Lauder Road and through Leith and stuff, just one bypass, So it's like, well,
so it's an interesting debate, that one.
Well, the good thing is with this is the great story of Sheriff Hall can be committed to history. Hopefully, if they build this flyover.
It's a city deal scheme, isn't it? Joint funded UK government, Scottish government.
I don't know how the funding is. All I've seen is the public consultation documents.
I think it is. And the public inquiry is due to start very soon.
Because there was some things they wanted to interlace some tram system with it or something. And of course, just to the east of it, it had a small diversion. Do you remember when they put the Borders Railway in?
Yeah.
And they had the approach to Sheriff Hall, they had to temporarily build another alignment.
Right,
all the places you wanted to have to put in an underbridge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that leaves us now, Stuart, with one more junction to discuss.
I have no idea what this could be. Absolutely none.
So before I reveal what it is, I preface that this junction, it's no longer here in this form. It is changed completely to a thing where it's insignificant now that people don't even mention it. But this was a junction so egregious, so etched in people's minds for being held up on that it lives on to this day as a junction that receives not even a modicum of love.
Yeah.
It could say it would be the least loved of our list.
I think I know what it is.
And that junction is the A80, A73 roundabout at Auchenkilns.
People need to get over it.
It received over 10 votes. Which was the nearest was Sheriff Hall, which was 6. I do have that. People need to get over Auchenkilns. Now, I remember I just started driving in 2005, which was when it was turned into the Great Separated Interchange that it is now. But let's educate some of the younger people on this. But this was a roundabout slap bang in the middle of basically the A80, and we say A80 because it wasn't M80 back prior to 2011. This is the main road that connects the north to the strategic motorway network around Glasgow and the connection to England, and there's a roundabout in the middle of it.
But I will caveat that, because again, it wasn't a deliberate thing.
It wasn't. You're absolutely right. Yeah. But let's just look at it as it was, and you're in there, and you didn't know about the Greater Glasgow Transportation Study and the plans it had. You're this guy, it's 1999,
right?
You're sitting there at peak traffic.
And it was hell on earth. And I went to Stirling every day for a few years when it was the roundabout, and it was awful.
What were your delays, would you say, just caused by that junction? Because I remember half an hour, I'd say.
I would typically have to allow 30 to 40 minutes from the M73 to Auchenkilns.
See, I would... I mean,
and the A73 North approach wasn't much better.
Yeah, but not many people use that. Or do they? Is it quite a highly utilised road, the A73?
Oh, yeah.
To get from
from
Airdrie up to Cumbernauld?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But anyway, you can imagine as the user. So how did this come about? This was, of course, the A80 as a dual carriageway was built in the 1960s, was it not?
Yeah, so the Cumbernauld diversion of the old A80 was built in the early 60s. Mm-hmm. Auchenkilns, I believe, was also ground conditions related. Mm-hmm. So all the junctions in the upgraded A80 were grade separated, except for Auchenkilns.
Woods, Old Inns.
Yep. And again, because of ground conditions and the expense, and because they knew, or at the time they assumed that the new M80 through the Kelvin Valley, Stirling motorway, would be coming along by the mid-1970s.
Yes. And there was this massive interchange that was planned roughly parallel to where it was, because this is where the Stirling motorway, M80, and the Hamilton-Cumbernauld motorway would have had a large kind of like cloverleaf type
quite
interchange.
Quite near to where Croy train station is. So railway station.
Sorry. Yeah.
I always put me up for that.
So no, that's just it. That we have seen some plans that they tried. It was a stackabout they wanted to do for Auchenkilns to kind of get traffic through it. But ultimately, it was left as a roundabout until 2005 when it was grade separated in advance of the 2011 upgrade. It was that bad. They had to do something at the time.
Because they delayed the decision on the motorways as part of the Central Scotland Corridor study thing that came along, but Auchenkilns was as bad as the A8 was at that time, and so the A8 got its hard shoulders, A80 got its roundabout. So that was to try and just provide some immediate relief. Did you know that Auchenkilns flyover was left wide enough for the 3-lane M80?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Shame that. Oh, and did you also know that John Cullen was involved in the design of the original Auchenkilns roundabout while at the Cumbernauld Development Corporation?
Oh, was it? No, I actually did. I didn't know that he had a hand in this.
That was pre-ring road design.
You'll be happy to see it upgraded now, given the situation.
Indeed.
The upgrade cost about 25 million. It was really expensive.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's some you've mentioned about the ground conditions, and there are certain features of that junction that the trained eye can see that deal with those ground conditions, and that was done by AWG construction partners.
Yeah. Oh, I remember them.
You know, so people have some things to say about it. It's a particular incident that occurred. David Bryce says, Auchenkilns roundabout, a barge trailer laden with 2-litre iron brew bottles lost its load going west. Both lanes were shut. I think this happened when the upgrade work started. Somebody says Ian Kerr says it was a nightmare on late Friday, late afternoons.
Yeah, even southbound A80 was a nightmare.
And Stephen Hines says, did 14 or 15 months commuting through Auchenkilns around the time the upgrade was going on. And he said it was an absolutely miserable place. Well, Stephen, I hope your life is a lot better now that this monster that dwarfs Sheriff Hall even in its...
in memory. And Whitlets.
Yeah. Number 10. If you notice something, though, we've come to the end of our list, and I'm not sure if we've got time for any honourable mentions. I was sitting.
You've got a minute or two.
But do you notice that many of these are roundabouts?
Yeah.
Do you know what? The roundabout is a wonderful thing. It's a classic British design of a junction, and you need nuance to use them, and they are terrific, and they serve a great purpose. They give it a safe way of turning around as well.
Yeah,
they're only good up to a certain point with certain traffic levels. Now we muck about with them, and this is where it all starts going wrong. As you know, we get them bigger. We have these dual carriageways that collide with them, even motorways at some point, and they just fail. Yeah. So come on, break out the concrete. Let's get building flyovers, Stuart.
My goodness.
So that's what I've got to say there. So we've got some honourable mentions. Kilbowie roundabout.
Where's that? Oh, Clydebank. 82.
I strongly dislike this roundabout. I was going to say something else there, but I very strongly like this one. So Kilbowie roundabout is the one that you can Clydebank when you're on the 82.
That's the one that the Lomond motorway would have interchanged just to the east of there.
Yeah, the Lomond motorway would be the one a bit further down.
Yeah,
at Drumchapel, where you get that border between Glasgow City and Western Barton. Kilbowie's the one where you come along the 82 and you turn right then to go down towards Clydebank.
What's wrong with Kilbowie?
It's incredibly busy on all approaches to it. And there's a lot of turning that people do from the 82 going down. And a lot of the population of Clydebank coming from other places like Faithfully and all these other bits, Suntowns and Duntucker and all these places, all come down that way as well. So everybody, it really is the nexus point in that part of town.
Fair enough.
You know, somebody says it's a riot. Even though it's lights, it's a free-for-all. Some people have also said it works better without the lights. I've never seen the lights off there.
Okay.
So Kilbowie, I really don't like Kilbowie. I used it for many years, and that would have been an ideal roundabout for a hamburger. Drive the 82 right through the middle of it. So
I remember John Cullen suggested a car-only lane going under.
Car-only lane. That was probably the most John Cullen thing he's ever said. And I do love that. So Maybury's mentioned as well.
Maybury. Oh yes. Oh, Maybury. That should be in the top 10.
Maybury's evil, isn't it?
Maybury is awful. Maybury and Barnton. That whole lot should have been in there.
Oh goodness me. Barnton came up. Now, apparently Barnton had an arrangement, and I don't remember this, of a double roundabout system.
Yeah,
so
I just remember that.
And apparently it was notorious for some vendor benders and being caught up in it. It was just great fun. But that, at the moment, it's just going to signalise junction. I don't think Barton's too bad, but at Maybury, I'm not keen on at all.
Okay.
I think what constitutes a junction not to get as much love is confusion.
Maybe.
Sometimes people perceive them to be dangerous.
There's a few that haven't made the list that surprised me.
Longman, Sheriff Hall in the north.
Is that Inverness?
Yes,
right.
The one just prior to Keswick. Very busy on match days.
Okay.
That's got plans for a flyover.
Interesting.
Red House.
A92.
A92. Kirkcaldy roundabout.
I'm surprised that there's no Anderston Cross.
Anderston got a couple of votes, but it didn't really make it onto the main thing.
Yeah, I'm also surprised that South Queensferry roundabout at the southern end of the Queensferry Crossing hasn't appeared, because I know that's been problematic.
Do you know, you were speaking about this one. I know you couldn't cast a vote because you had to be.
Yeah.
But you were speaking about that. You don't like that. It's a gyratory,
yeah,
as it was officially referred to, but you're not. You think there's areas for improvement.
I think so. Another one I would maybe have included, Helen Street.
What's wrong with Helen Street? It's just a diamond.
The traffic lights at that junction are horrific.
Very slow. See if you're coming off the M8 and you're heading westbound off, and you're going westbound off.
Yeah. Oh, and as a Lanarkshire person, there's two that I would definitely have put in that top 10.
Garrion Bridge.
And Worley's Roundabout, East Kilbride.
Worley's has got worse. Worley's is definitely feeling more pressure now that Wraith's been upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
I think Worley's can be seriously busy. There's another roundabout north of Worley's that's further up. Nurston or whatever it's called, which are particularly bad as well.
Stuart Way.
Yeah, they're very, very, very busy places. I mean, East Kilbride is a very car sort of place.
Mm-hmm.
It is a busy place. So yeah, there's a kind of that unholy trinity of roundabouts around there.
Yeah,
is not nice. I know though. Do you know what though? The thing is, I put Worley's on the original nomination list,
right?
But
another one
mentioned.
As another one as a Lanarkshire person, Palace Grounds Roundabout, Hamilton, at the Hamilton end of the A723 dual carriageway, M74 Junction 6. That can be a right pain in the bum at times.
Is that the big one that you get to go towards Asda?
Yes, that can be.
Do you know what? I used that today?
Yeah, good stuff.
And it was awful.
Yeah, it's bad. Aye, so we could probably do a top 100.
No, you're absolutely right. So, there's loads of honourable mentions. Yeah. Loads of honourable mentions. And I hope you enjoyed that, Stuart. Maybe I did that.
Some of them were surprising. Some of them were surprising for me. But you know what, John? It's good because as the Scottish Roads cast, it's good that we've reflected junctions from across the country and not just the central belt. So that's good. Yeah. I'm glad people are chipping in from all over.
And we'll do this again in 20 years when they're all upgraded.
Well, there's that dream again.
There's that dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, well, listen, John, thanks for that. That has been a really good, interesting podcast. We've had a few good ones recently. A lot of new people listening as well, which is good. And if you do
welcome.
If you do listen regularly and you like it, do leave us a review, because it is a good way to help other people find us and listen. Leave a review on Spotify.
Gives us some feedback as well, what you like, what you don't like.
Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you listen to us, you know all the episodes are on there by now as well. We also have the social media.
We do.
The daily updates continue on social media.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Always sharing loads of material that we have, old photos. Yes. So make sure you go and have a look at these to get your daily fix.
Thanks also to the sponsors, Eastford Excavations and HBS Scotland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Without your support, we wouldn't be able to keep doing these, so really do appreciate it.
Indeed. And we will see you again in a few weeks for our next episode.
I'm looking forward to it already.
Yes, so see you then.
See you then. Bye-bye.